Okay, good. Let's go ahead and start. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. And thank you for joining us today on the session on OpenVPN and Access Server. Um, Before we dive in, just a couple of quick things to keep in mind. Please use the Q&A box for any questions. This helps us keep track of them and making sure that we don't miss anything. And also at the end of the webinar, you'll see a quick survey pop up on your screen. It only takes about 10 to 15 seconds to complete it, and we would greatly appreciate your feedback. So help us to improve our future webinars. So please go ahead and complete that survey. Again, as I said, it's only a few seconds to answer those questions. My name is Sean Gores. I'm a technical sales engineer. My co-host today is Brandon Giron, one of our Access Server product engineers here who will be answering questions in the background. Also, if there's anything needs extra clarification, Brandon will jump in to add insights as we go along. And there are part of the demo that he will take over and explain the futures. So our agendas today, we're going to do a very quick, less than a minute introduction to OpenVPN as a company. Then we're going to introduce or do an introduction to Access Server if for people that they're not familiar with the product. And then we're going to look at the new version of Access Server 3.0, and look at the key features that makes this version different. And then we're going to log into a live access server, a new version of Access Server. We're going to look at the new admin web UI and look at some of the features of the Access Server. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and start. OpenVPN, as a lot of you may know, is a global leader in private networking and cybersecurity, helping businesses and organizations secure their networks in a flexible, scalable, and cost-effective way. The company's mission, our mission is simple. Redefine secure connectivity with a Zero Trust VPN as a security foundation, enabling businesses of all sizes to enforce secure remote access server across SaaS applications, the internet, and the private resources hosted either on-prem or in the cloud. At OpenVPN, we have two products. Cloud Connexa is our managed solution that enables secure, segmented access to company resources without exposing your entire network. It basically allows organizations to enforce strict access controls, ensure users and devices only connect to what they need. And then Access Server, the product that we're going to talk about today, is our self-hosted VPN solution that enables secure remote access while allowing administrators to implement policies that align with zero trust principles like user authentication, access controls, and encryption, and so on. So both solutions help businesses reduce risk, enhance security, and improve network visibility. Key component of a successful ZTNA strategy, basically. So whether you're looking for a cloud-based or self-hosted approach, OpenVPN provides the tool to make zero trust a reality. Now, what is Access Server? This is for people that they're not familiar with the product or they haven't used it yet. Our Access Server is a flexible self-hosted VPN software. It's easy to set up, whether you want to run it in the cloud or on your own servers. It is made to help your business securely connect remote workers while also supporting today's security practices like zero trust again. So no matter if your team is working from home, the office, or mix of both, Access Server keeps everyone safely connected. With Access Server, your team can work securely from anywhere. No need to be tied to one spot. You get full control to fine tune who can access what and enforce zero trust security. Even if someone's credentials get stolen, multi-factor authentication and network isolation help keep your data safe. And on top of that, both admins and users have easy to use interfaces to manage everything without hassle, basically. So how does it work? Basically, you deploy Access Server on your server or in the cloud, as I mentioned earlier. If you need high availability, you can cluster servers together. DCO or data channel offload, we're going to talk about that during the demo. It's enabled by default now. It's basically improve performance. And lastly, your users just install the OpenVPN Connect app, available for all major platforms, and connect using your server details, basically. So managing Access Server is easy, whether you like using the web interface or you prefer the command line. You've got flexible options to installation for installation also. Again, whether it's in the cloud or virtual machine or somewhere else. Plus, the OpenVPN Connect client works smoothly on all major platforms. So your users can connect basically from any devices. Now, when it comes to getting users set up, is really easy. They can use a web interface to download and manage their connection profile, or you can even create installers that have everything they need bundled in. Users just enter a URL to connect, and then you can automate the app settings with a global configuration file. This makes support smoother and gets people connected faster. Now, security is where Access Server really stands out. You get to pick from different authentication options, like SAML for single sign-on, LDAP, and other ones. Multi-factor authentication comes ready to go right from the start, plus device posture, and then location awareness, make sure only trusted connections get through. So with advanced encryptions, basically keeping your data safe. You can even set up automated tighter policy for users who might pose higher risks. And networking. Network routing is solid and flexible. You have a choice of a split tunnel or full tunnel. With the split tunneling, you improve network performance by letting internet traffic go outside the VPN when it's safe. You can restrict access down to individual IP addresses or ports. You can support different types of network environments and connect multiple offices securely, basically. Now let's talk about the Access Server 3.0. This is a major upgrade. It's all about giving you stronger security, easier to use features, and better management tools. With tighter default security settings, smoother workflows for both users and admins, and a modern approach to cluster communication and authentication. We're going to talk about that in a second as well. So Access Server 3 is built to meet today's enterprise's needs. So let's walk through the key updates so you can see how they'll benefit your deployment and make things run more smoothly. Access Server 3 gives the admin web UI a fresh new look and make it easier to use. We redesigned the interface based on users' feedbacks to help you find advanced features faster and work more smoothly. The REST API has been greatly expanded to support the new UI function and to help you integrate with other tools or automate your workflow. So if you've set up SAML login, it now shows right away, making single sign-on simpler for everyone. Also, token-based authentication adds another layer for security for your web services, and you can manage multi-factor authentication directly from the web interface, and I'm going to show you that in a second. So basically, there's no need to mess with command lines. Plus, detailed REST API docs and the ability to edit configurations right in line save you time on setup, management, and troubleshooting. So all in all, version 3 is packed with admin-friendly improvements that makes your job a lot easier. One of the most significant security improvement in 3 is changing the default behavior around server log profiles. Previously, in the previous versions, these profiles were enabled by default, which could sometimes cause vulnerability or operational issues in diverse environments. Now, with the new install, server log profiles are turned off by default. So your system is more secure right from the start. Now, if you're upgrading to 3, don't worry, your existing settings won't be changed, so there won't be any disruption. And if you do need server log profiles for advanced use cases, the option is still available. So, and we're going to see that again. This way, the change is both safer and flexible without breaking the compatibility. Cluster setup in Access Server now has been overhauled for a greater security and ease of use. Previously, on the previous version, Cluster nodes used to dedicate a TCP port, which was 945, and a special username, which was named admin_c for API authentication. Before setting this up meant basically opening specific firewall ports and dealing with extra management. Now, with version 3, all the communications between cluster nodes happens through the REST API built right into the admin web UI. This means you no longer need a separate port or a special user. It makes things simpler, cuts down on firewall setup, and boosts security by keeping all cluster traffic within a single, well-protected API channel, basically. Now, one last thing before we jump into an access server or live access server. Access Server 3 basically brings some changes to keep up with the latest best practices. We have removed a few older, less used features like VPN, IP-based automatic grouping, and managing server profiles via the web to make the platform simpler and safer. Now, on the flip side, new additions like token-based authentication and improved REST API docs makes automation and integration easier for developers. There is also experimental support for NF tables, which means better Linux firewall management for those ready to try newer firewall tech. Basically, UI improvements help boost performance, and new subscription management basically make it easier for admins to keep track of multiple deployments. Plus, Sackley command line tool now has better token management and status alerts to help admins stay on top of their VPN environment. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to have ask Brandon if you want to add anything here, and then we're going to log into a live access server.
Yeah, hello guys. Yeah, about for example, the Sean, can you please show the previous
Oh,
slide?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you. For example, about NF tables, right now the Access Server uses IP tables by default. So if you have a custom configuration using NF table, that will conflict with the IP tables that the Access Server creates. With this experimental support for NF tables, you can now have your custom NF tables created with your configuration, and the Access Server will use their own NF tables. So in that case, that won't conflict. In the case that you want to test that functionality, it will be good if you do that in a test environment, because as it is explained, it is a experimental support for that. Also, there is a new features with the new admin web UI in 3.0. For example, you can now configure TLS cipher suites that was only available via CLI in previous versions. And for example, there is a new feature that is called config editor that I will show after showing demos. That is about you can now configure settings that were only configurable via CLI. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you very much, Brandon. So as you can see, I'm logged into an access server right now. So for people that they've used the previous version, you can see that this is completely different look and different setup, basically. Right out of the bat, when you log in, you're going to see the status page. This is where you get an overview of what's happening on your network, such as number of connections, your server details and licenses, and so on. Active connections is going to show you if there's any active connections going on, and then activity log. This is a quick log that you can see what's happening on your environment again. Now, when it comes to VPN server, with Access Server, you can connect to your VPN and web interface using either the server's public IP address, as you see here on my screen, or a host name. So using a domain is usually much easier for clients and users to remember than an IP address. So we highly recommend that you use a domain. So when you first log into the admin web UI, you'll start with your server public IP address. But once you set up the host name, you can just use the domain name instead. Here's the real advantage. If your server ever changes, all you need to do is update the DNS record. That's all, a lot easier than asking every client to switch to a new IP address. So you register domain, add the DNS A records to hostname, and add the hostname in the admin web UI, as you can see here on my screen. And then you can sign up with the new UI. Now, the second tab that I want to talk about here is subnet. Access Server automatically hands out dynamic IP addresses to clients basically when they connect. So It usually does this in a sequential order until basically it reaches the end of the subnet that's available to the OpenVPN service. And then once it gets there, it just started reusing all their addresses. It works like a DHCP, but technically Access Server isn't running a DHCP server. So it's more of the light emulation that take care of the assigning the addresses automatically. So this is the address that is set up here. Now, if you need to give a static IP to any clients, you can do that here. And then obviously the default group address pool, you can see it. If you see any need to change, you can change it here. When it comes to clustering and failover tab, you can see this is where you can set up a new cluster, or if you have an existing cluster, you can join the cluster and then set up the failover. These are a little bit more involved, so it's not gonna, we're not gonna have time to go over these during this webinar, but we will have videos and instructions on these to show you how this can be done. When it comes to security, obviously, this is where you can set up your minimum TLS required, and then the other data channel ciphers here. Brandon, do you have anything to add here on this tab?
Well, in that tab at the very bottom now, you can configure if you want to enable or not the server local profiles. By default, it is disabled, as Sean mentioned, to improve security. But if, for example, you have a use case like, let's say, you want to only export one single profile to 100 or 1,000 of users, you can enable that from there.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Yeah, this is where you can enable or disable the server lock profiles. Data channel offload or DCO. This is enabled by default now. Now, to understand the difference, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to talk about this for a second here. So let's first look at how the OpenVPN protocol normally handles data without a DCO. When packets comes in, they land in the kernel space. Then OpenVPN has to copy them over to the user space. That's where the encrypting and decrypting happens. And once that's done, the packet gets copied back into the kernel space before finally being sent to their destinations. Now, with the DCO module enabled, things are a lot more efficient. Instead of all the back and forth, the packets comes to the kernel space, get processed right there, and then go straight to their destination. So that's how we improve the performance. Now, when it comes to users here, it's pretty simple. You can just add users if you need to add user and assign to a group. If you need to manage any users, as you may know, in Access Server, there are a lot of configurations you can set up at the user level, at the group level, and the global, at the system level. So if you need to make any changes on the user level, you can come here and make those changes. For example, if I want to allow or disable auto login for this one user, I can do this. So as MFA, enable it. One nice thing about the new Access Server, you can reset MFA for a user from admin UI. As you can see here, this user is enabled in MFA, and let's say something happened and as an admin you need to reset their MFA. So we can come here and reset that. We can also reset the password from here and so on. When it comes to groups, again, the same deal. You can create a group here if you want to do this. Just give a name, and if you need to make any changes to the configuration at group level, you can make those configuration again here. If you want to enable auto login for the whole group, or enable MFA or disable NFA, or even the authentication method, if you want to give a certain group, a SAML, a single sign-on authentication, or LDAP, or anything like that. You can do that. Now, when it comes to access control, is an important part of a security, obviously. It lets you decide which users or groups can reach the specific services and tools they need to do their jobs, while keeping other resources available only to the people who should have. Now, this way, not everyone in your network get full access to everything. With the Access Server, users connect to your network securely through encryption, even over the open internet. So now you can define access rules also. For example, allowing a user to reach one resource, but blocking access to another. Access Server manages access controls on 3 levels, as you can see here: group and user access rules, and then we have global access rules. With the global access rules, gives you two options. for managing VPN traffic, NAT, which is network address translation, and routing. Now, NAT is default, and it's great for giving VPN clients access to private subnets. Basically, Access Server takes each client's virtual addresses and translate it using the server's own IP address as the source when sending packets to the private net. Basically, this makes things simple and work well in most cases. On the other hand, routing is better suited for scenarios where you need two-way communication between VPN client and the resources behind the access server. It does take a bit more setup, but when you enable routing, you can configure access so that specific subnet can talk directly with all VPN clients' IP and subnets. But keep in mind, routing also requires updates to your server's routing table to make it all work smoothly. Now, this is a good example of using routing, especially if you use voice over IPs. When it comes to intergroup connectivity, by default, groups are isolated. They can't communicate with each other. But if you want to create a new intergroup rules, you can create it here. Internet access and DNS, this is where you can set up your full tunnel and split tunnel. Also configure your DNSs. If you want to push DNS from Access Server, or you have your own DNS servers that you want to configure here. And then inner client communication, again, by default, all users are isolated, but you can allow user-to-user connections, or admin can access all users and so on. When it comes to authentication, like before, you have multiple options of setting authentication with Access Server. You can have LDAP, Radius, SAML, PAM, and PAS only. This is a default authentication system. By default, if you set up, like I set up local here, then everyone has local authentication method, but you can go change it at the user level or group level if you need to. All you have to do is just go to that tab and configure your information as needed. Now, for the web services, this is where you can configure your TCP port if you need to change it, if you see any reason to change it. And for the client web server also, you can have some options as far as the profile availability and also operating system availability. Now, for the certificate management and advanced, I'm going to pass it to Brandon to explain these a little bit more in detail for you. So, Brandon?
Yeah, thank you, Sean. In this tab now, we have a single tab where you can manage all the certificates associated with the OpenVPN Access Server. In this case, in the Web Server Certificate tab, you can manage the Web SSL certificate that the Access Server uses for the admin web UI and the client web UI. From there, you can see, for example, that the Access Server uses a self-signed certificate for web services. So you can see that information there, for example, the validity of the certificate. And if you click on that link, see full certificate details, you can see more information about that from there. Yeah, and if you want to upload your own SSL certificate that is trusted by a public CA like GoDaddy, for example, you can upload those files from there. Now, in the VPN Server Certificate Authority, uh, that's where you can manage and create CA certificates. That's the one that is in charge of sign the client certificate for the OVPN file, the client profiles. And in the VPN client certificates is where you can create or generate new OVPN files. Those the client certificates. Once you generate that, it is listed there. And from here, yeah, this is a new tab. It is called Advanced Settings. This is the feature that I mentioned before, Config Editor. This is a very special configuration and unique here in 3.0. From there, you can basically configure everything that was only possible via CLI. For example, Sean, could you please go to the search, yeah, and click expire.
Okay, so here we go.
Yeah, for example, in previous versions, if you want to configure the VPN session token, that's the one that is the set 24 hours. Now you can do that from here. It is a good feature, and it is be really helpful in cases where, for example, you are limited and you don't have access to the CLI for some reason. and you need to configure something very important, you can do that from here. It is like you can do that everything from here, but it is recommended that only do this if you are really sure what settings you are going to configure, or maybe if it is suggested by the OpenVPN Access Server support. Because if you do a misconfiguration here, maybe you can lose access to the web UI, or maybe affect the services in the VPN. But this is a really cool feature. Now, Sean, could you please go to the next tab? Yeah, thank you. From here, you can configure and push OpenVPN server directive and client directive. For example, if there is a special configuration that you have, and you cannot configure that using a regular configuration here in the access server, you can push that from there. Please go to the next one. Yes, thank you. This is what I mentioned before. When you want to configure, let's say, TLS ciphers for the web services, or maybe you have a requirement to configure custom HTTP headers for the access server, this was only possible via CLI in previous versions. In 3.0, you can now configure that from here. Yeah, this is the configuration where you can convert the SQLite 3 databases to MySQL. This is really, really helpful in cases where, for example, you want to keep the access server configuration isolated in an external MySQL server. And the last one, in previous versions, we have a command that we call SACLI support. This command will show you a lot of information that is helpful for support in cases you have issues and troubleshooting. In this new version 3.0, now you can generate this SACLI support from here, and you can export that in a, for example, a TXT file, and then provide that to support. This is really helpful in cases like I said before, maybe you don't have access to the CLI for some reason, maybe you lost SSH to the Linux machine, and OpenVPN support requested to get this file. Now you can do that from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brandon. So that's basically the end of our demo. Now, Brandon, some questions are in the Q&A box, so I'm asking everyone else if they have any questions, please go ahead, type it in, and we're going to go over all of them. So the first question, if you can see it, Brandon, it says, is there any improvement for mapping SAML group IDs to access server group names?
Yeah, that's the same scenario. In 3.0, it works the same. It uses a Python script using that we call a post authentication script.
Okay, good. So it's the same script. Is there a better method within the web UI to kick or disconnect a user without having to block or unblock the user?
Right now, you can do that with a command that we call disconnect user. This is only possible via CLI, but if you know the command, you can do that using config editor from the admin web UI. So you don't need to block a user for that.
Okay, thank you. Travis has a couple of great questions here. Are there any new options to limit the number of connections for a group or a user?
Right now, we have a feature request for that. It is in the backlog.
Now, the next question, is there any new option within OpenVPN Connect to automatically reconnect when the timeout is reached?
Yeah, that was the previous scenario before 3.5.0. Let's say that the password was safe in cache. That's the reason when the VPN session token expires, it reconnects automatically. That was changed in 3.5.0 and beyond because of we receive a lot of complaints for users and customers where, let's say that the VPN session token expires in midnight while the people were sleeping or something, and they don't like that to reconnect automatically because maybe they were using, let's say, MFA with Duo or something like that. They will receive a span of challenges for the MFA. That was one of the reasons we changed that in 3.5.0. So if you want to get like the previous behavior, you need to use a previous version for that.
Okay, thank you. if we're only using SAML authentication for user authentication, is there a method or option to hide the username password fields to prevent confusion?
Yeah, you can do that now in 3.0. Maybe Sean, can you show that, please?
Uh, Here we go. Let me log back in.
I mean, when you configure SAML for a user, or maybe you configure SAML as a default authentication method, that is shown in a different way. But please configure SAML as a default authentication method.
Okay,
From there, yeah.
okay, let's try now. This is what you want to show, is that correct?
Yeah, that now it shows like that. Like it
Okay,
is now like showing that this user is using SAML, so it needs to use SAML for that.
okay, great, thank you. Couple more questions here. Is there still the option for config profiles within the admin page? This feature was useful for staging changes and made for an easier change revert process if needed.
I think it is referring to the custom configuration profiles that has uh, the option to configure different settings, and you load a configuration profile. Sean, do you have a another server running, for example, a previous version?
A previous version, yeah, I do have previous version. Here it is. Here we go.
Yeah, go to tools, config profiles. I think that's what this user is referring. And yes, if it is the case, this configuration was removed in 3.0.
Okay. Zach asked, this question isn't directly related to AS 3.0, but I was wondering if this is best practice for self-hosted access server in general. Is it safe to expose the access server VPN daemon directly to the internet over TCP 443 versus having both the client UI and daemon exposed?
Yeah, I saw that Zach opened a ticket about that last week, and yes, I mean you can do that. By default, we are using something that we call web services share, where by default the OpenVPN access server for both the client and admin web UI listen to TCP 943, but you can like just using 443, and then it will be redirected to TCP 943 internally. You can have that. That's the default way. But if you want to change that either in the admin web UI or client web UI port, or maybe you want to change the port for the VPN daemon, you can do that. And I mean, that's supported, not a problem.
Okay, great. Thank you. Justin is asking, is there a direct upgrade path from 2.x to, or what is required migration?
Yes, I mean, you can do a direct upgrade. For example, if you are using 2.10, 2.11, 2.12, 2.13 or 14, you can do like a direct upgrade, not a problem. If you are using a very old version, like for example 2.7, it will be required to maybe to do a hop in the middle to an intermediate version, and then you can jump to the latest version. As a recommendation, if you are in a production environment and maybe you have a lot of users and you are using a very old version, it will be better to do a migration to a new server. And also, if you are going to test or maybe deploy 3.0 in a production environment, it will be highly recommended to do that in a test environment first, so you can see and test all the new features. And when you are sure that everything is working fine, you can do that migration.
Alexander is asking, can we terminate specific user session from web UI?
Yeah, from the web UI, the only way to do that is to block a user. But as I mentioned before, you can do that using a command line. Maybe you can show that, Sean. I send you the command via chat.
Actually, let me put it on the chat. Let's see if, so everybody can see it to everyone. Here we go. So I just typed the command into the chat box. And Zach, thank you for answering my question. Will there be any further development for 2.x, or is it all future development dedicated to 3? I think it's all dedicated to 3. Am I right, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, right, the latest version was 2.14.3. That's the last one. And right now, we are working in 3.0. That's the latest version. And we will release 3.0.1 soon. and that will have like a lot of fixes for some issues that we detected in 3.0. But yeah, I mean, we will continue the development for 3.0 versions on you.
Okay, great. I don't see any other questions, so if anyone has any questions, please go ahead, type it in the Q&A box. We're gonna, hang around for another 30 seconds. And if you don't have any questions, I want to thank you for joining us. Again, please answer those few questions on the survey when it pops up on your screen. It takes only a few seconds, but it's going to help us a lot. Thank you. Thank you, Zach. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day and be safe.